Good morning, Marconi program, and welcome to another Try Something Tuesday. Today we're going to be designing our own coloring pages. So I'm going to call them Pass It On Doodles. And so our Pass It On Doodle projects are going to look something like this. And so the idea is that we're making these doodles, or coloring pages, and then we can pass them on with a note on the back. I'm going to pass mine on to a little boy that lives across the street. I haven't met him before, but because we've been in quarantine, I've been at home a lot. He's been at home, obviously, and so I've seen him playing outside, so I'm going to take this across to him. But yeah, you can pass it on. You can color it yourself if you would rather, because they are pretty fun. I know I did a couple on my own and colored those as well. But the idea is we can do something and then pass it on to someone else. So for this project, what you're going to need is a piece of paper. You're going to need a black marker or a pen if you don't have a marker, and that's it. So once you have all your supplies, go ahead and come back to this video. Remember, you can pause it, shortcut, use the space bar to pause the video while you get your marker and paper. Okay, so now that we're ready to get started, what we're going to do is on our page, if you would like to make a border so that you don't have to use that very edge of your page, you can. And I'm going to do that on the board here. So first step is just draw a rectangle for your page. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Mine is a little misshapen. I think it looks kind of fun like that, especially for the first design that we're going to do, which is organic shapes. So organic shapes are more free-form shapes. So usually when I hear shape, I think of like squares, rectangles, triangles, circles. Those are all geometric shapes. So organic shapes, what we're going to start with, are more free-form. They're usually asymmetrical. A lot of times they have lots of curves and things like that. So these shapes on this design are almost all organic shapes. So whatever like this crazy guy is, like he's not, you don't have a name for that shape because it's lots of different types of lines. There's curved lines, there's straight lines. It's not symmetrical at all. So those are our organic shapes. So when you're doing this project, you can choose to do either organic or geometric, or you could mix them together. I think it's kind of fun to challenge myself a little bit to choose one. So let's start off with some organic shapes. And what I like about this project is you don't have to think about it too much. So if you want to write some sort of message on it, you're going to start with that and then either do some sort of box around it or like I did, kind of an organic shape around it so that you can still read it, or you could do your shapes all around the words. It just might be a little harder to read. But we're just going to do, for this activity, we're not going to write any words on it. We're just going to start doing our shapes. So what you're doing with this, like I said, I like this because you don't have to think about it too much. The goal is that none of your shapes would overlap. So between all of your shapes, you're going to leave some space, and you don't want any of them touching. So really that's the only parameter, and then you just keep going. You keep going until your whole space is filled. So you can go back and even add little shapes in spaces. Like I'm going to add in that teeny tiny crevice, I'm going to add another shape, or you can keep it big. And usually when I'm doing these shapes, especially for organic ones, I'm really not thinking too much about it. I'm just kind of following the lines that I've made. And so sometimes I end up with really big shapes, and sometimes I end up with teeny tiny shapes. And you can think about this as sort of going over with big shapes and then coming back with smaller ones if you want. But again, this is a really nice activity for me because it's relaxing. You don't have to stress too much about how it looks, because as long as you're following the don't overlap rule, I think they turn out really pretty cool. You can also think about, while you're working, just experimenting with different lines. So you can do bumpy lines, you can do smooth lines, do straight lines. I'm going to do some zigzag lines. And sometimes I'll even draw something that reminds me of something. So like this shape kind of reminds me of like a cloud. And then I'll do some more around that. Some crazy somethings. And that'll kind of turn into something cool. It's been neat as I've been working on this project. I realize this feels like very familiar because right now I feel like we're seeing this all over the place, this kind of art style, especially for some reason in like office supplies, like kids' school supplies, I should say. I've seen stuff like this all over kids' school supplies, and probably is because it's fun to color in. So definitely if you have a little neighbor kid or a grandkid, they might enjoy working on your little note card that you made for them. This one kind of reminds me of a crown, I like that. And even if you wanted to add shapes that are actually supposed to be something, you can totally do that. You could draw crowns, you could draw little hearts in here, you could put in whatever you want. Ice cream cones, whatever's on your mind. But that's our organic shapes. So now I'm going to erase this and then show you what it can look like if you're maybe a little bit more of a structured kind of person. You don't want to do all the free flow organic shapes. You can do our geometric shapes as well. So I'm going to erase this board. Okay, so now for our geometric, which is usually when I'm drawing what I prefer to do, just because I do like trying to make everything nice and even. Okay, there's my giant geometric. So just like before, I'm going to start off with a box here, just for our paper. And a couple different ways. Actually, let me show you a couple that I did here. So I was coming up with some ideas. So there's our organic that we just did. And then this geometric, I use lots of different shapes. So I have circles in there. Actually, I have a couple organic shapes in there. Whatever this guy is, that's an organic shape. But for the most part, I did triangles and circles and maybe like, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. I don't remember my geometry well enough to say what shape that is. It's not great. But you know, you could have pentagons in there. There's a pentagon. Trapezoid, maybe? Maybe it's a trapezoid. I don't know if I remember. But that's one idea for a geometric design. Another one is something like this, where I chose all triangles. I'm trying to figure out which way. There we go. All triangles for that whole design. And so you got options. You can do really whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. You can try a couple different things. I don't like that. There we go. So here's another one that's mostly, yeah, that's mostly geometric, but it's got some organic in there as well, and I started coloring that one. So you can do lots of different things. Like I said, I would say if you're planning on doing a word or some sort of message, just start with that and then do your shapes around it. I'm going to do a geometric design now, but it's the same process. You can just start anywhere on your page, just start adding your shapes. I think today I'm going to do a mix of different geometric shapes, and this time I'm going to try to actually do just geometric shapes. No organic this time. But it is a little bit trickier with these because you will end up with spaces that you have to get a little bit more creative to fill. Whereas the organic shapes, it's kind of easy to fill your spaces because you can make them go exactly wherever you want. Like with any of our artwork that we do together, it does not have to be perfect. As long as you're enjoying yourself, I'll call that a win. Do a circle here and see what we can get around him. Kind of like doing these shapes. They remind me of macaroni. I think that's still a geometric shape because it is symmetrical. Don't know what you'd call it, but it is still symmetrical. You can even kind of think about like little patterns as you're doing this if you want. You don't have to. I kind of like the idea, of following some patterns. So if you want to do like triangles all the way down the side. Kind of connecting them together. Whoop. Let's see what I'm doing here. I don't know those guys. There we go. I know that one. That one's a parallelogram. I'll do a bigger one here. Parallelogram. There we go. It's like a rectangle, but then if it's falling over. I do remember that one. Wonder if anyone watching this used to be a geometry teacher. If you are, I'm sure you're embarrassed by me. This is pretty sad. Can't remember all of my geometric shapes. There we go. Okay, so that's my geometric artwork. Now that one's finished, we're gonna look a little bit at some coloring techniques. Actually, maybe I'll fill them in here. It might be a little bit easier to see. Let me show you again. On here, let Let me turn it up. So there are lots of different ways. If you choose to color this yourself, it is pretty relaxing. The coloring book trend is a trend for a reason. It is a lot of fun. So some of the different ways that I like to color, especially because these are simple shapes, I did a gradient here. So I started dark and then made it lighter. You can, of course, do solid fills. You can add patterns. That's where it's really hard to see on here. But I have some stripes, some dots, some dashes. This one over here has some solid and some line. This is a little bit of shading too, but you can't really see it in there. So let me try to do a couple on the board for you to see. Let's see what color I have. Here's a pink. Hopefully this shows up. So I do like to do some shading or different designs and textures and experimenting with different lines in my coloring. Especially something like this, because you can just go crazy and try all sorts of things just to see how it looks. So if you do choose to color this yourself instead of passing it on, or you make one for yourself and one for someone else, definitely experiment with some different textures and patterns, because it is a lot of fun to do that. There we go. Let's try one up here. I want to make sure I don't rub it off by accident. I do all from one point, some lines, just to fill this in. Kind of reminds me of sunshine. There we go. And I'll do one more. Ooh, maybe not. Seems like my marker's running out of ink already. Yep, that one's just going to be solid because it is running out of ink. But yeah, be encouraged to try all sorts of different things, because even if you don't like how one texture or pattern comes out, it's part of a much bigger picture. So you don't have to love how every single shape turns out. They'll look great all together, especially if you just choose a couple colors or a couple colors in the same palette. So say you do all warm colors, so pinks and orange and yellow and red, do all those warm colors, or you could do all cool colors, your blues, your greens, your purples. It's going to look really nice and like you had a huge game plan, even though you were probably doing this like me and you were just kind of letting the artwork goes wherever it goes, and enjoying that process. So have fun and enjoy making your pass it on doodles.